first of all, you have to have the mindset. You have to think like a hacker. So that's really important for you to do that. You also have to have all the protections in place. It's really important that you have good firewalls, good antivirus, email security. If you're running a law firm practice, you get a lot of emails every day. Well, there's email security that can filter out a lot of that garbage so that you don't click on it to begin with.
You found the Real Estate Law Podcast, because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. If you're a real estate professional or looking to build real estate expertise, then welcome to the conversation and discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com.
Hello. It's the Real Estate Law Podcast. Thank you so much again for listening to us. Jason Muth here along with Rory Gill, attorney, broker, Next Home Titletown Real Estate, Urban Village Legal in Boston. I could see that you have more shelves over your shoulder today versus the last episode.
The slow progress here. So for those tuning in just to see the progress of our background and our shelves, this is what we get today. We get the shelves in place. Now we just need to decorate them and get the wall up and going.
Yeah, the recording of the podcast does not stop for us to actually put together a good set, but we finally got around to it. Upstairs, we have this beautiful background. Downstairs, we're both in the same building actually today recording, but we're going to have those shelves looking awesome, put something right in the middle, have a great podcast background, something fancy just like our guest Eric Shorr with Secure Future Tech. Did I get that right? Secure Future Tech.
Yeah, you sure did.
Rhode Island.
It's great to be here.
Eric, I'm embarrassed to say that this is episode number 79 for us. I haven't really talked about what number episode that we're on. We just kind of publish these things, but 79 episodes in, and we have not talked about cybersecurity and protecting ourselves and protecting our businesses. And this is something that you do all day, every day as the CEO of your company. I believe I saw that it's Cybersecurity Awareness Month. Is that right?
October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So it is the month to talk about cybersecurity. So you are in good timing.
Well, we're recording this in October. We're putting this out in late November, but cybersecurity is a topic that is 24/7, 365, 366 on the leap years, I'm sure.
Hackers never sleep, so keep that in mind.
Yeah, and I could attest to some personal infringements upon my credit and accounts and whatnot that have happened this year. We don't have to get too far into it, but I think that we're all aware that hackers are out there. They're out to get our information. There are tons of scams that are happening. Rory, as an owner of two businesses that deals with lots of sums of money and lots of legal things, I'm sure you see this stuff all the time.
And I'll try not to monopolize the whole conversation just telling stories, but barely a day goes by where I don't receive an attempt at a scam. And I'm only counting the scams that are directed specifically at real estate brokerages and real estate law firms. There's a niche industry out there. I don't know where these people come from, but they're busy and they're constantly trying to get into my businesses. So I'm really excited to talk to Eric and welcome him on. But before we go into my list of questions, I just want to ask Eric, tell us about your business a little bit, how you got started, how you found this practice area, and what your company does.
Oh, well, I'd love to. So in 1992, I started my business. Back then, we were called PC Troubleshooters. We were a computer repair shop, and I was working for the University of Rhode Island while I was a student, and then I started taking private accounts back then. Back then, we didn't really have to worry about too much cybersecurity. Very few people actually had high-speed internet and weren't really connected. Maybe they were connected through dial-up. But fast forward 30 years later, and I can't believe where the time is going by, everyone is connected to the internet. There are a lot of cybersecurity threats out there, and I've continually, for the last 30 years, grown my business. So we have a team of experts that works with law firms and other businesses as well, protecting their data. So it's a passion of mine to make sure that, my clients are protected.
Around the time that you started on the campus of University of Rhode Island, I was on the campus of Brown University just up the way. And I remember getting my first email address in 1993, I think it was, when my friend went abroad and she wanted to stay in touch, and she's like, hey, just sign up for an email address. You can go to the computer center and log into the computer there, and we could share messages back and forth. This is legitimately what it was back then. I mean, people listening to this right now might not have been alive in 1993, and it feels so strange to say that we're dating ourselves there, but somehow you found your way to a cybersecurity company on the campus of URI when interconnectivity probably wasn't as popular as it is today. I just give an example of the first email address, right? Then I got an AOL address shortly thereafter. I didn't realize these scams were out there back when you're just starting out with dial-up and 10 hours of service per month, or actually physically driving to the computer center to check your email address. I mean, you probably remember those days, right?
It was almost non-existent back then. I think I got my first email account in probably 1990 or 1991. So it was pretty non-existent, and the threats just weren't there. At the time, hackers were, kids having fun, like, me or others. Maybe they were, playing around on the basement and calling up dial-up services or using a modem to try to hack into different computers that had a dial-up phone number. So that's what it looked like back then. It's not like that anymore today. Everything is interconnected. And that's why this issue is so important, because it affects every single one of us.
Yeah. In the real estate and the law professions, we talk about both those things obviously a lot on this podcast. What are some specific issues that you have seen working with clients and people that What are ways that people should be aware of scams that are out there? And what are some just basic things that you've done to help protect people in those industries?
First of all, there's a common misconception out there that many people even today still have, particularly if they're running a small law firm or a small practice. They think that they're not a target. Like, well, why are hackers interested in me? I don't have anything of value to them. But that couldn't be further from the truth. Now, if you're a real estate attorney, you're moving around a lot of money as part of closings. So that is a very big target. But even if you're in a different kind of practice, or a real estate agent, or you just have a computer, hackers want to get into your system, and they want to use your systems to be able to commit their crimes to the intended victims, because hackers never use their own computer systems. So it's called low-hanging fruit. They look for small businesses, small law firms, realtors, other people that they can just get in and use their systems, or they can steal their address books and then send out a whole bunch of, fake emails. Those are phishing emails to see who they can lure in. So that's what's going on. So first of all, you have to have the mindset. You have to think like a hacker. So that's really important for you to do that. You also have to have all the protections in place. It's really important that you have good firewalls, good antivirus, email security. If you're running a law firm practice, you get a lot of emails every day. Well, there's email security that can filter out a lot of that garbage so that you don't click on it to begin with. So having the basic security in place is just the start, though. It's not enough to have that, because half the battle can't be solved by technology. I don't want to scare everybody out there, but that's the truth. The sad truth is that hackers are making billions and billions of dollars stealing from you and me and whoever they can get their hands on. And so it's really important to have training too, cybersecurity training and ongoing training. And that's something that all of our businesses should be doing.
I've been to a bunch of continuing ed classes on cybersecurity where they just kind of talk about the topic, but you hinted at something that a lot of those seminars seem to skip over, and that is answering what are they after in the first place. We can start to talk about how they get into our systems, how they break in, what to avoid, but what do they want from our businesses in the first place?
That's a great question. Access to your computer. Because if they can get into your computer, not only can they steal the data from it, but they're after the address book. That's really important, because now, Rory, if I get your address book and I have access to your email, I can now send to all of your clients, contacts, friends, family. I can send emails that a good majority of people will click on because it came from you, because I trust Rory. He's my attorney, or he's my friend or cousin. This is the kind of thing that hackers are looking for. So that's the first thing. The second thing is they're looking for passwords. It's really, and if they can get access to your systems, and they do that through a variety of ways. But the number one way they get in is through phishing emails. That's those fake emails that come from your bank or come from a friend or somebody and you click on a link that's embedded in there, and then you're giving access to hackers. So they're looking for that as well, so that they can spread their attacks to others. So those are the two big things that they're looking for.
So Rory actually has had, I'm sure he has a list of a couple things that he has experienced, but the one that I could think of has happened multiple times to you and to your agents, where your agents are subtly getting text messages from what seems like it's you, asking to go get gift cards from Home Depot or Walmart or somewhere and put money on them and do with them or send the code, or I don't know exactly what this specific scam is. I'm sure Eric knows exactly what I'm talking about, but it's happened a couple times to your whole team, and not to name names, but there have been a couple folks that basically at the store to get these gift cards, which shocks me that people would go to that length. But
this is a common thing, Jason.
Yeah, the text messages seemed so genuine. It seemed like it was Rory asking them these questions, and then it wasn't.
So hackers get our information in a variety of ways. It can be from our websites. It can be, there's other, the dark web, which is a black market of information. And so they create these realistic looking text messages or emails. And I cannot begin to tell you how many times I have seen this kind of attack work, where the gift cards actually went out. And it's very sad. It's very sad because that once that money goes, it's gone. And the way that it works is they'll get a text message from Rory, or even, interestingly enough, my front desk person at my office received a text from me asking her to go get gift cards, which I thought was hilarious. And she immediately brought it to my attention, which was really good. But then it'll always go something like this: "Hey, are you available? I need you to do me a favor. I'm in the middle of something, so I can't talk on the phone right now, but can you please go down to the pharmacy or the store and get me some gift cards, 10 gift cards for $100 a piece, and then take a picture of the backs, scratch off the code on the back there so I can see it and send me a picture of it. Thanks so much." And it works. People do that. We are all as human beings. We want to please people. And so if our boss is asking for something, there is a good chance that we will not question the boss, and we will go and do as he's asking, or she. So it's really important to know that, your boss is not going to ask you to go and use your own money and credit card to go and buy gift cards. And if that's ever the case, the best practice here is just pick up the phone. Please don't text back or email back. Because I'll give you a situation that we've seen in the past as well. Someone's legitimate mailbox, usually it's through Office 365, or it could be Gmail or whatever, has been compromised, and the hacker is actually reading the email and responding to the email. So if you get one of those text messages and you write back, "Hey, Rory, did you really want me to do this, Rory?" And the hacker's going to write back and say, "Of course, yeah. Can you please take care of this for me?" It is always important, if something isn't quite right, pick up the phone and just confirm. It's really important that you do this. And a lot of people who are working for us, maybe some of the younger folks, they don't necessarily like talking on the phone, which can be a challenge because everybody does text and Facebook and Instagram and all that good stuff. But it's really important to get verbal confirmation when dollars are at stake.
It's the good news with a scam like that is when a text like that impersonating me comes from a completely unknown phone number. We know that none of our internal systems have been compromised. They're just accessing what's public information about a real estate roster, who's in the company. So they're taking public source data and they're trying to trick people into it. So I know with that, our systems are not likely compromised, but it's an opportunity for my agents, people into my office to kind of have a relatively low risk way to adopt the mindset. Pick up the phone, call me, which a number of them did. And they always happen in batches. So I always get all these phone calls in a batch, but I know that they're thinking of things the right way. What becomes a little bit tricky are things that look a little bit more button up and real. And one thing that's really been circulating a lot, particularly in my law practice, are fake title orders. I'm getting a number of title orders that look somewhat legitimate from lenders that I have done closings for. But if you look at it, something's a little bit off about it. You take a look at it. The sender's email address is from kind of an unknown third site. And it's for, often I've seen it's for 5 Main Street or some real sounding address, but they don't specify the city. So they could really be targeting anybody. But I've seen the fake title orders in there. When we receive those, should we be worried about any implications or compromises? And then what should we do about the fake title orders when we receive those?
A lot of these attacks are just coming from the outside, and there's no compromise in the system. If you have proper security in place, I don't want to say you're 100%, but that goes a long way. And so what's happening is just spoofing, it's called. It's just, It looks like it's coming from a legitimate address or person, but it's really not. And that is a tough one to prevent. That's why the training is key. And that's why we implemented a security training called Think Like a Hacker. That's something that my wife and I designed together, and we give this talk to our clients, and also we just did that for Providence Business News' Cybersecurity Summit a couple of weeks ago. So it's really important to be aware of that and be mindful. Now, if there is a compromise and somebody wires the money and loses money, it's really important for you to take action as soon as possible. I can't stress that enough. This does happen. There's billions and billions of dollars being stolen. So cyber criminals are sending this stuff out because it works. So it's really important to contact the authorities. If there's a large dollar value at stake, the FBI, particularly there's a cybersecurity unit in Boston. So you want to call the FBI and report this right away. They may be able to intercept the funds before they disappear permanently. But you have to do that within the first 24 to 48 hours or consider that money gone.
If my office or one of my clients fell victim to fake wire instructions and wired money off to the wrong party, who should their first phone call be? Should it be the FBI? Should it be the sending bank, the receiving bank? Or do you really just need to call everybody?
Well, first and foremost, you need to get a company like mine involved. So call your IT provider or cybersecurity specialist to help you with that. So that's the first thing. You want to make sure there isn't an ongoing breach or something inside your network. So that's really important that you do that. And then you want to call the authorities. But also, I think what's really important to know is all of you should have cyber liability and cyber crime insurance. If you don't, that has to be a requirement. Because if there is a loss and you don't have any kind of cyber insurance, that money is gone. You're not getting it back. So that's where these policies come into play as well. So you want to reach out to your cyber insurance company as well. And they have a whole series of resources and teams that can help you during an incident as well.
One of the most nefarious things and difficult things about wire fraud, at least in our industry, we see it's most often something that impacts our clients more so than our own offices. And I'm sure there are many, many exceptions to the contrary there. But we're often really concerned about providing wire instructions. But the truth is, if I were to just email wire instructions to a client, those are legitimate wire instructions. We're just teaching them a bad habit to accept the wire instructions that receive over email. So it's about training them and thinking about things in the right way. Who's liable though if one of our clients falls victim to this and it's not a result of our systems being compromised, but they can see that we're working in a transaction together. They send these wire instructions off and the client falls for it. Where does the liability rest?
Well, that's a really interesting topic because the question is who's responsible, right? As an attorney, I'm sure you could answer that question a little better than I could. But the fact of the matter is you want to make sure that, if you're practicing a real estate agent, attorney, or other business, you do have the proper insurance to cover yourself, because if there is an incident, there could be responsibility all around. So you want to make sure that you're protecting yourself.
Okay.
So I have a question about kind of the work patterns these days. COVID's not going away, but we're kind of in the post-COVID surges, and work patterns have been very disrupted the past couple of years, where folks are going in the office, not going in the office, working remotely, not working remotely. The nature of real estate people are often not in offices, so like kind of a lot of agents and people that are in the real estate world are often on the go and not sitting at their desk on a network like many people that historically have worked in offices and cubicles and office parks and those, kind of traditional settings. But those traditional settings are also changing, where a lot of people have come into the workforce for a variety of industries, and they're working from their bedrooms, at their parents' house, at their apartment, whatever. What are some things that maybe this new crew of employees should look out for? People in their 20s, late 20s, early 30s that have a remote situation and they're working for any company, you name it, a startup, a massive company that lets them work remotely that's now just decentralized. What are some tips you might have for those folks?
The endpoint, that's the computer. You're right. It's not in just an office anymore. Many of us are working from home, working from our cars, working from coffee shops. So it's really important to be aware of that there are threats everywhere. And there are even more when you're outside of the office. If you have an established law office, it's going to have a solid firewall and a perimeter and antivirus protection. And there's a lot of built-in protection that we can do to protect that office. But once you leave that office, that protection needs to come with you. So you need to make sure that all of your devices have a really solid, what's called next generation antivirus system. That's an antivirus system with artificial intelligence built into it. So we can look at threats and kind of figure out where you are and what's going on so that it can stop it as well. And we need training too. If you're working from a coffee shop and you just jump onto a wide open wireless access point, that's probably not a good thing to do, because somebody could be there sitting next to you or somewhere in that vicinity, and they could see what you're doing. So those are all things that you have to be aware of. Instead of using a wireless access point that's wide open, use the hotspot on your phone. That's much more secure. It's not perfect, but it's much more secure than just hopping onto a coffee shop Wi-Fi. And then the other thing goes for home computers as well too. It's really important, if you're going to work from home, that you have a dedicated computer that you can do your work from, that can be secured, and the kids aren't hopping onto it, or maybe your spouse or whatever, to do online shopping or whatever. You want to have that dedicated machine that is used for work only, because homes have very little security, and hackers know this. They can jump onto a system, from home, and then they can piggyback their way into your work computer if you're accessing your work computer. So those are all things that you need to be aware of.
You hit in there. I have like a series of maybe kind of rapid fire questions to get your thoughts on, but and that's where I'll go. I know that as business owners, we should take this seriously and, consult with a professional to build our infrastructure, especially if we are dealing with, lots of private, non-public personal information, if we're dealing with lots of money moving around, and if we're dealing with remote work. But, a lot of us kind of implement these other things just to patch things over. So the first question I had was about using shared Wi-Fi spots, convention centers, hotels. I remember sitting in a room full of attorneys at a convention center when everybody was logged into the conference center Wi-Fi. And the speaker came on and told everybody that's a bad idea. You should be on your phone hotspot. Is your phone hotspot really safer than a shared Wi-Fi? It
is safer because it's not a shared connection. So when you hop onto that conference room Wi-Fi, or you're at a hotel or whatever, just keep in mind there could be somebody lurking, and they may be able to get into your computer through that connection. Where when you get onto your hotspot that's attached to your phone, unless you're sharing it with everybody, it's really just for your use. So it is safer, but nothing's perfect. It's really important that everybody knows that there is nothing 100%. Anything can be compromised, but the odds go down. And you don't want to be that low-hanging fruit that we mentioned earlier. The more defenses and the smarter you are in the cybersecurity realm, the tougher it is to get in. Hackers may move on to their next target, because at the end of the day, the quicker a hacker can get in and steal something from you, the more money they make. If they have to spend all day messing around trying to get into your systems, they may move on to somebody else.
Is two-factor authentication one of the single best things that a business can do to tighten up their networks?
Without a doubt. Now, two-factor, or it's also called multi-factor authentication, is an additional step that you need to log into your systems. So you'll have a username, a password, and then you can set it up for that additional factor to be a text message to your phone, or what's even more secure is many of us are now using authenticator apps. That's an app that you put on your phone, and it has a rolling code that changes every 60 seconds, and you use that as part of the login process. Now, without it, hackers would have an incredibly difficult time getting into your email or other systems that are protected by two-factor.
And actually, I use the authenticator apps to get access to some third-party platforms. Now, if we're a business and we're subscribing to third-party options like, MyCase or Clio for a law practice, how worried should we be about the data that's stored in those services? Or should we just trust that if there are these bigger companies out there, they're better equipped to handle the data than we might be as small providers?
Yeah, I wouldn't trust. That's a tough word to say, because some very big companies have been compromised, including Microsoft, Target, Home Depot, Uber. I could go on and on all day. I mean, we could be on this call for an hour listing off all the compromises. So it's important for you to know that it is possible, but you don't want to make it easy for hackers to get into your account. So that's why, setting up all these cloud services with multi-factor authentication is really important. But just know it's not safer because it's up there in the cloud, because I hear that a lot. Oh, we don't have to worry about security on our computers because the cloud vendor is doing security for us. Well, they're doing security for their end, but not on your end, right? So your computer still needs to be protected. So it's really important that you take that seriously, because if I'm a hacker and I can compromise your system, I can watch you log into Clio or whatever tool you're using, and I may be able to get in that way.
A similar vein, should businesses trust some of the file sharing apps out there, like Dropbox or the various file sharing apps? Because a lot of those are really invaluable for remote working. Are they safe to use?
I don't want to go as far as say safe. They are okay to use, provided that they're set up properly. Now, a lot of people use the free versions of Google Docs or the free versions of Dropbox. Those are not okay because they don't have enough security built in. To our clients, we actually sell them Dropbox for Business. That's a business class version of Dropbox that has auditing, two-factor authentication, a lot of security built into it. It keeps revisions of files, so if something gets deleted, you can scroll back to unlimited versions. So you want to use the paid versions of those and make sure that you consult with an IT professional that all the proper security is set up and that people only have access that they need to have access to. It's called a zero trust philosophy. I'm only given access to that folder or that file that I need to do my job and nothing else. So it's really important that you take the time to set it up. They're not any more or less secure than keeping stuff on premise. Well, a lot of people feel, I think we're safer because I have my files in a file server that's under my desk. No, because you're connected to the internet anyway. And actually, that's easy for hackers to get into your office. It's much more difficult for them to compromise Dropbox or Microsoft.
With the servers all over the place, who should be using a VPN? Should all businesses be doing it? Who should be using a VPN? Everyone
needs to use a VPN. If you're remotely working, you never want to just directly connect into your systems. I used to see a lot of that with our clients. We don't do that. You have to have a VPN if you're going to connect into an office. But, several years ago, people would open ports through the firewall and allow remote desktop, RDP. And that is really bad. That is a hacker's dream. They can get into your system very easily and compromise the system. So virtual private networks is essentially a secure tunnel between two locations. So it's an encrypted connection, which means the signal is scrambled so that only you can use it.
Okay. And then kind of the last of my rapid fire questions that have been on my mind about data security are mobile devices any safer than your desktop computer running an iOS or the Android equivalent, or are they just as much of a liability as your
They're a liability as well, which is why it is so important to make sure you keep up to date on your updates. It's very important. You know, Apple is always coming out with updates. Droid is always coming out with updates. It's really important that you do that because they can be compromised as well. I think PCs are probably a bigger risk, but it doesn't mean that an iPhone or your Droid app is not a risk because it is. So that's why it's really important to keep up to date, have the latest phone with the latest security, and use it in proper places. You know, don't jump on the hotspots and other things. And you should be okay.
Yeah. You know, I hear a lot of what you're saying, Eric, and, you know, for the layperson, like I'm the non-attorney, non-agent on this call, not a cybersecurity professional like yourself. I hear these things and I think about cybersecurity, and I think it's a bunch of people down in the basement somewhere hacking away on a green screen, like war game style, like we've seen in the movies for so many years. But a lot of what you're talking about, at least from our perspective, is education, which you mentioned earlier. And it's explaining to people what some good habits are. And I know there's a lot of behind the scenes software and infrastructure that I'm sure you offer to your clients all the time. But you're probably right. The first defense is just understanding and good behavior for people like us, people who are the employees, people who are using the technology, you know, not sharing passwords, not logging in a unsecure environment, not leaving a computer to run to the bathroom and come back, probably not sharing files on USB drives. You know, I just think back to my last employer, and they worked with another cybersecurity company, and there were all these short little skits and vignettes that they had us watch on a regular basis. And, you know, they were cute and hokey, but they told the story that you're telling, which is really some basic stuff. Like, if you're working for this company, you know, don't just bring your files home in an unencrypted manner and use your home computer. A lot could happen along the way. Whether you lose that drive or whether you get hacked, those are some basic things that people can probably do a better job with.
That's a common thing, by the way, is people's laptops get stolen all the time. And it's really important to make sure that those laptops are encrypted. You know, that's called BitLocker on Windows 10 and Windows 11 machines. Macs, you can encrypt the hard drives as well on those. So if the machines do disappear, and that does happen all the time, so please don't leave your laptops in your cars, particularly on the front seat for everybody to see, because the window can get smashed and your laptop can be gone in a second. But that's really important. And it's really just having these ongoing conversations about good cyber hygiene.
Yeah.
You can't have just one conversation with your company or your firm. It has to be an ongoing conversation to make sure you remind everybody, because people forget, or maybe they get a little lax with their security protocols. So it's really important that this gets worked into your, you know, regular meetings and talk about it.
Well, talk about recession-proof businesses. I mean, you got one right here, Eric, as technology continues to change and we keep putting technology into our ears, onto our wrists, on our faces, you know, with smart goggles, smart this, smart that, smart home technology. I mean, there's a lot of entry points that people that are looking to do nefarious things can come compromise our networks and take our personal information. And all it takes is 1%, right? It's just like direct mail. Like, you could send out 100 mailers. If you get one response out of 100, you're going to make a ton of money. I bet you that these hackers, they're throwing out a big net. And if they can get one fish out of thousands of things that they're looking at, they're probably going to make a lot of money.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because in the business, we say that as a defender, right, we have to be correct 100% of the time. Where if you're an attacker, it just takes one little opening to get in somewhere. So we have to be constantly vigilant and on our guard to make sure that we are doing everything that we can to protect our networks and to educate our team members and get the education out there is about what's good cybersecurity practices.
Yeah. Well, Rory, you know, it's just like that. We had a conversation with an attorney a couple weeks ago. I did, at least, and I got freaked out with all these things I'm not doing correctly. And you got a flurry of text messages saying like, I need help with these things. Same thing here. Like, I think I want to power down all my stuff and turn off all the lights and just go hide for a couple days after this conversation. What do you think, Rory?
No, I don't think you're examining the problem here, and that's probably just to catch your breath, realizing you probably are doing a number of things correct. But I hear as a business owner that engaging kind of these professionals to both to audit my practice to make sure everything's set up correctly, that I'm educated myself on how to maintain the systems going forward, but also how to train the agents and the staff that are in the office, so that to me, that's the most important thing, and that's probably. I'm not sure if Eric would agree, but that's one of the biggest values that companies like Eric's bring, is being able to train your staff and employees, because you might have the best button-up systems that you could possibly have, but a poorly trained member of your staff can open the door anyway, and let the hackers come through.
You're 100% correct. We can, the little secret is we can put in all the best security and hackers can circumvent it using what's called social engineering. And social engineering is the art of deception. And that's it. It has nothing to do with technology. So you can have the best firewalls and the best security in place, but if somebody opens the door and lets you in, it's a problem. So social engineering is a big issue, and that's why it's really important to talk to everybody about how these scams work and what people are looking for.
Yeah. Well, Eric, thank you so much for all of this. This is just so many things to think about, and hopefully you as the listener have taken a couple notes, or you are going to change your behavior for a couple different things that you're doing on a regular basis as a result of hearing some of what you've just heard in this podcast. Why don't we get to our final few questions that we ask of all of our guests, and then Eric will have you tell everybody where they can get a hold of you if they want your services or have questions. So the first of these three questions, if you can get on stage and talk for a half an hour for any subject in the world with zero preparation, what would that be?
Well, my favorite subject is me, so I can definitely talk about me for half an hour. But in all seriousness, I love cybersecurity. I love computers. Technology has always been a passion of mine since I was a little kid, when I got my hands on my first computer when I was about 8 years old. So I'm dating myself a little bit. That was a little while ago. But yeah, technology and cybersecurity and the industry and cloud computing, all those are very interesting topics that I could definitely get up on stage and talk about.
My hunches were about the same age, because I think that we were in college around the same time. What was your first computer? My
first computer that I worked on in 8th grade was a Radio Shack Model 1. And our elementary school, at the time I was living in West Hartford, Connecticut, had one computer. And I stayed after school to get time. Now, there were no programs back then. Right. So we had magazines with different programs that you could type in to the computer. And so we had a lot of fun doing that.
I remember having a Commodore 64, right, with a floppy drive.
Yeah, I had a Commodore 64 as well. That was the first. Actually, I had a Commodore VIC-20. That was my first computer that I owned, and then I upgraded to the Commodore 64. Right.
It's a big piece of 80s nostalgia, I think. The VIC-20 and
that was a great system. I love that.
Yeah, I still remember playing summer games. I played summer games.
The same games.
You had it, yeah. See, summer games, Agent USA. Those were my two favorite games. Second question we have of the final questions is: tell us something that happened early in your life or career that impacts the way that you're working today.
That's an interesting question. I think one of the things that I've gotten a lot of inspiration from is my dad. My dad is an entrepreneur. He's retired now, but he ran a textile factory up in Woonsocket, Rhode Island. And when I was in high school, he bought a computer for the business. And I worked very closely with my dad and his company to computerize the business. So there was a lot of inspiration from him. I learned a lot about business, and then I also got a lot of practical experience as a computer consultant working with my dad. So I think that was it.
Was he connected at all to Ann and Hope?
No, he wasn't connected to Ann and Hope, which was a Rhode Island company. he dealt with raw fibers. So he would buy wool and other materials, and he would sell them to people who made yarn and fabric. That business went away. It's unfortunately, we don't really spin too much yarn and make cloth here in the United States anymore. But it was a very good business for many years. But I found my passion in technology, and I went on to University of Rhode Island and started working for them in the IT department. And then obviously here I am today.
Yeah. And there's so much history in all those old mill buildings. There's so many mill cities throughout New England. If the walls could talk and tell the stories of them, we always love, going to the businesses that exist in them today and kind of learning about the past. The final question that we have for you today, Eric, is tell us something you're watching, reading, or listening to these days.
I'm watching House of Dragons. I love that. I love that show. I'm into science fiction. That's also another passion of mine that I could probably talk a lot about up on stage. But House of Dragons.
So Rory watched Game of Thrones. I can't just because I keep falling asleep during it because we have a young toddler and she's exhausting. But are you watching that yet, Rory?
I'm 2 episodes into it. So I think I don't know how far they've come along, and by the time this has come out, I'm probably still only 2 episodes in. But I tend to do shows like that in bursts, so I will catch up at some point.
Episode 6 or 7, and it's definitely something you have to, particularly Game of Thrones. You have to pay attention because there are so many different plot lines and things going on that even if you miss one episode, you will be lost. So I like it. It's a complex story, and it's a good one.
Eric, I have to ask you a bonus question about another show related to your profession. Rory knows exactly what show this is. You must, right? CSI Cyber. It's not on anymore. Did you ever watch that?
I'm not. You know what? I have not watched that show.
It was on a couple of years ago. And basically, Rory, I loved it. Everything got solved within 60 minutes. But I was a big CSI fan for so long. But they had a special show. It was on a couple seasons about cybercrime. And it just felt so, part of it was over the top and outlandish, and part of it was, appealing to the 65 plus audience that CBS has, and, creating the fear, uncertainty, and doubt of cyber in their minds. But I thought a lot of it was practical. And I think a lot of what you've said on this call today, is probably a plot line that CSI Cyber covered.
It's definitely, it's TV drama, but it's reality is it's real. I mean, this is happening every single day, and that's what gets me up every morning is to help protect my clients.
There's a whole episode about hacking into baby monitors and freaking people out in their kids' rooms, and I'm sure that happens all the time.
That happens, unfortunately. Yeah. That is not good when that happens.
And as I add more and more home automation items into the house, it's just more and more openings for somebody to come and get us, or at least spook us.
All of that is true. That's why you really have to think about, do I really need this? Is this something that I want to put in? And if yes, make sure you have a good password and you set up that 2-factor authentication.
Well, along with that, Eric, how can people get a hold of you so they could, hire you for your consultation, your services, talking at their conference? Where can they find you?
So we work with law firms all over New England and also other businesses as well, but we have a very good niche in the legal industry, and you can find us at securefuturetech.com. And my calendar, you can book an appointment with me. My calendar is right up on the website, and I would love to, if you need help, I'd love to be there for you.
Yeah. We will link all that up in the show notes, so just kind of look down beneath this episode and you'll find links directly to how to get a hold of Eric. And also how to get a hold of Rory. What are some ways that people can get a hold of you?
You can find me through my law practice, Urban Village Legal, urbanvillagelegal.com, or my brokerage, Next Home Titletown, nexthometitletown.com. And all my passwords will be in the show notes.
They will not, but you're welcome to add them if you'd like after the fact. And that's it. So thank you for listening. I'm Jason. If you need to get a hold of me and you want to reach me, I want to be a guest in the podcast, or you have comments for Eric, for Rory, for myself, any feedback, you can reach me, Jason, at nexthometitletown.com. And if you've enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you can give us a great review. Hopefully it'll be 5 stars. We love reading comments. We love all your feedback. So we do appreciate your listening. Eric, thank you so much for all of your expertise.
It's a pleasure.
Today. Yeah, it's great talking to other folks here in New England, especially about topics that are applicable to all of us. And if you didn't think cybersecurity was important, well, hopefully you do now. So on behalf of Eric and Rory, I'm Jason. Thank you for listening. Bye.
This has been the Real Estate Law Podcast. Because real estate is more than just pretty pictures, and law goes well beyond the paperwork and courtroom arguments. We're powered by Next Home Titletown, Greater Boston's progressive real estate brokerage. More at nexthometitletown.com. And Urban Village Legal, Massachusetts Real Estate Counsel, serving savvy property owners, lenders, and investors. More at urbanvillagelegal.com. Today's conversation was not legal advice, but we hope you found it entertaining and informative. Discover more at realestatelawpodcast.com. Thank you for listening.